The story is about a siege. Not a historical interesting siege like maybe the fall of Constantinople, although I'm sure there's plenty of good historical sieges. This one is about the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Right? I'm talking about Gaunt's Ghost 3, pulling out of the founding omnibus here, talking about the end Necropolis, which I think is hands down the best entry in the Gaunt's Ghost series so far, and I'm probably going to pick up the rest of the series. I'm quite enjoying Dan Abnett's work. And I think this one's worth talking about because it's interesting at a craft level, I think. It will really it made me at least really consider how a story of a city siege could be told. I think that Dan Abnett did it correct in that it is almost required to be a multi point of view, near omniscient narrator, because in order to take in the scope of the battle without skimming over or ignoring something, because you have he grabs characters from the lowest refugees to workers to auxiliary conscripts to trained soldiers to the middle class of politics to the elites to the high commanders, and shows how all of them play into war effort. And sometimes some people are doing interesting, sometimes these people are getting killed, or those people are getting killed, or these people are making mistakes and these people are paying the price. And the story has to jump around and take a lot of time is something that's interesting about the story. There are plenty of stories that you can find that take a couple days tops to resolve, such as books I write. You can tell an entire novel in an afternoon. Felt like it. This story, this siege, doing no real time skips per se, takes a month and a half, if I recall correctly, because that's just like how long a modern military siege actually takes, give or take, based on troop forces. I think if you're like me, you're paying vague attention to the war in Ukraine at the moment, and you're seeing, bombings here, attacks there, mass infantry there, tanks here bogging down in mud and failing and bombing and drone attacks and whatever. There's a back and forth. There's casualties and losses and disasters and reconquests and internal dissent, politics and money and you name it, and it takes time. And a lot of times, and a lot of other types of stories, I think you would lose the reader jumping between so many different people, because it is hard to actually get attached to most of the characters. Personally, I kind of got attached to the girl, the refugee girl that rescues the kids. That's low hanging fruit emotionally. Obviously, I'm attached to Gaunt and the main cast of the Ghosts. The other characters playing out the roles of the city siege, which, by the way, this is a hive city of Vervenhive, going to war with the chaos corrupted Zoika. There's a longer name, but it's called Zoika as slang. It's a generic. I don't even know what chaos god it is, by the way. I think it's just like a generic Chaos United, Herod or Asphodel, whatever. I don't know, there's like 30 characters that have some role to play. And in a normal story, if you're doing that in the span of, let's be here, one reasonable book, this is something like 300 pages, you don't really get attached to that many characters that quickly. However, this is the story of a science fiction military war sequence. It's an entire theater of war. So what you're going to get attached to is not one character in so much as you're going to get attached to the fate of the Hive City. And writing it as fully omniscient actually plays directly into that. It aligns the reader with the fate of the collective. Normally, I wouldn't even think of ever writing a fully omniscient story like that. I think most people will write that off this kind of scene jumping, head hopping kind of thing as old. This is like 1950 style writing. Oh, you need to be more cinematic nowadays. You got to focus on the character trauma more or something. if you followed the trendy advice, the kind of stuff that YouTubers will tell you is what the market wants nowadays, I don't think you could write this story. Every rule is more, when it comes to writing, generally speaking, is more of a guideline. Sounds like I'm memeing, but it's really not. Like, when you make one decision over another, such as writing in past tense instead of, or in present tense, or writing in first person or third person, when you make those kinds of decisions, it's not that you can't say that one is better than the other. They simply interact with the reader in a different way, and they will change how much the reader attaches, say, in the instance of first person or third person. A first person narrator, the reader is going to lock in on them specifically, and everyone else is going to be kind of around them. Whereas if you're in third person limited, it's much more easier to get attached to a larger cast, and therefore you can actually kind of use that to guide which perspective that you as a writer, if you are one, should be using, because it depends on what you want the reader to care about. And in the case of a big giant city siege where you care about the fates of millions and millions of people, an omniscient narrator that's jumping around to wherever the action is the hottest probably is the correct choice. Even though it's not trendy, it's not the way people write stories nowadays, typically. Although, I'm just gonna throw this out there. If you've got a recent example, say something that came out in the last 5 years of an omniscient narrator that you think was spot on and correct choice, let me know in the comments below. Let other people tell people about the books you enjoy. But I also want to give some meta discussion here, because this is, of course, Gaunt's Ghost. This is about the Imperial Guard, one of the more popular series out of the Warhammer 40k universe, which is not typically renowned for its good writing. And I really wish I could listen in on some of the discussions Dan Abnett must have had with the editing staff, because I can just see the discussion they must have had about, like, hey, we want to sell new scenery pieces because people don't really know what a hive city actually is and how they can use a hive city in their Warhammer miniature war games. So we need you to write a story that is going to be this swath of different encounters and scenarios and objective keeping, showing what the Imperial Guard against the Forces of Chaos can do in a hive city. Now, make it seem cool. Make the reader want to go recreate these scenes with their playgroup at their local GW store. Make the player want to build his own wargaming table of this super overbuilt cyberpunk dystopian hive city, so that we can sell them all these bits and scenery pieces and get them to rearrange it into new tournament terrain encounters and all that. I've had this feeling about the previous books, the short stories too, where it seriously seemed to be like the way Mattel used to make cartoons to sell their action figures and such, is there probably was a discussion of, this product is coming out soon, please write a book about it. I think. It's what it seemed like. It seemed like this was intentionally written to sell the game, which I don't blame them for, obviously. It's basically the point of it. It's one of the reasons that 40k is a popular game, I think. You can draw people in and give them ideas and fill their brain with these cool things to do with the game, and that's how you get it to be more than just stats and tables and dice rolling and dice and dice and dice and dice and buying more plastic than you've ever been able to paint. And I think that's pretty interesting. But short of interviewing Dan Abnett myself, I don't think I'll ever really know about that. That said, I'm going to keep reading Gaunt's Ghost, because when I came into the 40k universe, I had been thoroughly convinced that it was a nonsense, incoherent setting where none of the math makes sense, and it's just war. And yet this is actually a pretty rock solid science fiction setting, actually. Like, there's nothing weird going on. And the actual plotting is also very engaging. Like, I deeply appreciate fact that every time there's a major backset, a major disaster, or the shields go down, or there's a breach in the walls, or whatever, you actually get to trace it back to the moral failing of one of the human defenders of the city, Maybe it's their greed, maybe it's their susceptibility to chaos, or fame seeking, or internal politics, or covering up their own misdeeds, or something. You actually get to trace back the crux of the disasters is typically caused by the shortcoming. It's one of the humans failing to live up to their duty, which is a major theme in the 40k universe. But it also creates like very satisfying setup, anticipation, payoff, repeat. I guess I'm a Dan Abnett fanboy to an extent. I'm liking Gaunt's Ghost. What can I say? Drop a comment below. Drop about omniscient narrator books. Drop a like on the video, please, if you're enjoying this kind of content. Subscribe for more. Join the book club. Buy my book, too. Peace.